are
Hi,
you?
Kelly. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to speak with
Yep,
you again.
you're in my house.
Yes,
Yeah.
and this is mine.
Yeah.
The last time I think I spoke with you was at the an LA screening of First Cow back in early March before everything changed. And I know it must be a bit of a roller coaster. How is it? I'm so glad the film is back in front of us and available to be seen widely, but how does it feel just to be relaunching again these months later?
Yeah, strange. I mean, I'm grateful for the option. I, I did look forward to people going to the movies.
Of course.
But, this is certainly a great, it's a way for people to see it. So I'm
Yes,
thankful for that. Really am. Yeah.
for sure.
And
And I
I
hope,
should say, A24 making a turn on a dime and, continuing to support the movie was really nice. Yeah.
that's great too. I feel fortunate to have seen the movie in a theater, but I'm glad people get the chance at home to see it. And I know not everyone watching may have seen it yet, and I hope they'll stick around for the screening after. But I know some probably have seen it. But we'll tread lightly over spoilers and such. But
Okay.
this movie's based on a 2004 novel, The Half-Life, by your longtime writing partner John Raymond, and you two wrote the script together. How did the book become the film? And I know they're very different. So
Right.
what was that? Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan's novel, The Half-Life, spans 4 decades, and there's this big trip to China that happens in it. And there's no cow. And and First Cow, sort of spans like a week of someone's life, or two, and takes place in what is now Western Oregon. And so, it sort of got very consolidated around this. I don't want to really say that much about it but around the cow. And that allowed us to bring in all the themes and of John's novel, but most importantly, these characters that he had created, and that is really what stuck with me over all this time. And so it was many years of mulling over, like, how could we ever turn it into a film? And me really not wanting him to let anyone else with a more larger budgets have the project. And so it was fortunate that we kind of figured it out finally. It was yeah.
The cow kind of became the catalyst, as it were. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And this, at the heart of the movie, of course, is this friendship between Cookie, a cook who's traveling with this band of fur trappers, and a Chinese immigrant that he meets named King Lu. Was that friendship also at the core of the novel as well, or was it?
It's so weird we're doing the Q&A before people watch the movie.
I know.
Same thing. I mean, I love for people just to watch it cold.
Sure.
King Lu in the novel is actually 2 different characters that John kind of fused together for the script. And so the script really leaves the novel and sort of becomes its own world, but that is sort of the centerpiece of the film. We really are saying a lot here. Boy.
I will try to tread super lightly. I know I was trying to
talk about a film without talking about a film.
I mean, we can talk about the cow. The cow should come first, after all. And I don't think it's saying too much to say that Evie, the cow, gives a wonderful performance in the movie. What was it like? How does that work? And this is obviously not the first time you've directed animals, but can you just talk about directing?
You don't really direct animals. You direct a crew to come around to perform for an animal in a way that the animal lets you get what you want, basically. Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty practiced at this, though we always kind of forget it because crews are so built towards high energy and speed and aggression. And when you're working with animals, you really have to pull back and be quiet and sort of, we've learned to not speak and move in slow motion and just really go everything that's against the grain of working with a crew. But we did it a lot during First Women, and we learned our lessons really slowly of how to work with all those horses that none of, they were all wild horses. But on the first, we forgot some of that working with Evie, and we had to relearn it. But we were quicker to relearn it. And so it's really just everyone coming around to the animal. We're all sort of slaves to the, she's the star. So, she's kind of a lot of attitude, queen on set, high maintenance.
It was worth it. She's great. And we could talk a little bit about your lead actors, John Magaro and Orion Lee, without saying too much about what happens, but they give wonderful performances. How did you come to cast them as Cookie and King Lou? And
Magaro was on sort of everybody's radar. I thought he'd be really unexpected in the role, and he's playing. His real name is. He's really Figowitz is his last name. So he's this Jewish cowboy, and he was also on Scott Rudin, who produced the film, knew him well from theater work. So we came to John pretty quickly. Everyone was very excited about John. But the Orion Lee was a harder find, and Gail Keller, who's the casting person of this film, I mean, she searched for the King Lou character. She showed me hundreds of people, and she watched hundreds of people. And Orion did quite a few readings for us, and we sort of developed this relationship online. And his performance just sort of kept coming back and evolving. And so, it was lucky, and it was a lot of work on Gail Keller's part.
For sure. We're getting some questions already and we're relieved to know that it seems that many people actually have seen the film, so we're not speaking completely into a vacuum. But
in my head, I swear to God, in my head, I am thinking that I was so confused. I was like, what, they're all at the theater and they're gonna, completely have spaced on what we're doing. Everyone's actually at their house.
We're all, I know, it's and I'm sure
my dream world that everybody's at a theater together.
We're in a virtual theater experience, and this is obviously the weird way things are now, but I think we can they're definitely, I think many people have seen and loved the movie, and we'll probably watch it again, maybe a second, maybe they saw it earlier at festivals. But there's a question actually was related to, if going back to Evie, the question from one of our audience members, what is your relationship like with animals and wildlife or the wilderness in general? And I think it's you talked a little bit about this with Certain Women and with Wendy and Lucy, but so much of your films is of course about man's relationship with nature and animals and outdoors. So
it's funny because I shoot in the Northwest. I'm from Florida. I lived in New York City for 30 years. I live out west now, but it's really, a lot of it's John's writing, and in Certain Women, the Miley Malloy story, but John's writing is a lot of what pulled me west, because these projects were so centered here. And I have, more and more my life sort of became more full of nature. It used to just be in these windows of time when I'd be scouting for a movie or shooting a film. And then Yeah, my dog from Old Joy, it's in Old Joy, who could never really, she was a fawn, you know, I found her and she could never really be left alone. So she became part of the movie scene with us. And she was such a natural, like now I really realize working with other animals, just how great she was, if I may say. She just got it for some reason. She was just wanted to join in. And I realized when making those films with my dog, what it did performance wise, how it really keeps the actors like having to respond to something. And aside from the quality, nice thing that it adds to a crew. And then that kind of went up a notch when we were dealing with wild oxen in Meeks, because you would just like, in that case, you could be really hurt if you weren't tuned into the animals. But so now but I don't know, it's just where it's an easy relationship for me to understand, I guess.
Yeah.
Being a person that likes the animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your dog is not a diva, so that's good to know. Yeah.
My dog's gone now. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So sorry. Moving. There is a gosh, a lot of people. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to navigate the windows a little here. I've got these. It's I'm doing we're doing the best, but I think we can say this is it doesn't say too much. This is a story. I think it's a beautiful story about a friendship and between two men, and it's the kind of portrait of a friendship I don't think we often see. There's this just quiet intimacy and thoughtfulness between these two characters, and this is nothing new for your films, of course. But we don't often see an interracial friendship, certainly let alone at this period of time. Can you just talk about I think it counters a lot of the kinds of relationships, especially between men, that we're used to seeing in movies.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't address any of it with some outside idea of interracial relationships or what we see in cinema. It was really these two characters in this place and two people that, Cookie being not fitting into the sort of rough and tumble scene that the trappers live in, and King Lu being, well, they're all immigrants. So, King Lu's new to the place, just like Cookie's new to the place, but they're both outsiders. And true, there already is a caste system in place, even though there's not much else in place at that point. Right. But as soon as those two were together in their own world, became really easy to just focus on them and this particular relationship between these two particular people, and to not, I didn't really feel the weight of any baggage of anything outside of just them. And Megaro and Orion were just, they both have qualities like those characters. When you get to know someone while you're making a film with them, you're not sure if what you're getting of them is a response to that they're in this world of playing this character. But John's very sort of inward thinking, reserved person, and Orion is very analytical and has to talk every plan out of every shot of everything. It was, they had that yin and yang thing going on. Yeah. And then you're in the environment, you're in the rain of the West. There, like you say, there's animals about, you're sort of on a camping trip together as it is, just in production. So it all kind of falls into place. And, just give them space to do the things they need to do, the physical things they need to do.
And those physical things are so foregrounded, it's so prominent in the film. And again, this is, I keep saying, very true of all your work. You're so attentive to process. We see them just even tidying the house and doing physical chores, physical tasks. Yeah, can you just talk about
Well, I
your
think there's
interest in
been a lot.
process? Yeah.
Yeah, I am interested in process. I mean, that to me is, you know, film, that's what filmmaking is. Filmmaking is just this long process that and it gives you something to wake up on every day and work on. And I think teaching's like that too. And so, but in their world, I think just figuring out how to eat every day is just like an ongoing process of, you know, foraging and catching and trapping and skinning and fishing and preparing. And this is the Cookie's place where he feels really in his element. And we see him in the film so many times outside his element, that when he's cooking, that's his, you know, he gets to be the artist that he is in that moment. And so but I do like watching people make things, food, clafoutis, bombs, whatever it is, whatever we're filming. Yeah, it's I do like the details of you know, King making a pair of slippers or whatever it is.
Right.
It's a way for a character to come through that's just not in the dialogue, and that you can, yeah.
You mentioned the clafouti, and that's, so I'm taking that as fair game. This is a great food movie, and there actually is a question from one of our commenters. Can I find the recipes you used for the clafouti and the other food in the movie? You know, they look delicious. They said.
Cookie gives the recipe in the film, and he makes it right in front of you, so you can. The lesson is all of how-to is all there in the film. I sent John a bunch of cookbooks, John Magaro, that I got here at Powell's bookstore in Portland, of, you know, the Lewis and Clark cookbooks, and there's just a lot of cookbooks if you look for cookbooks in the early 1800s, there's not a ton of ingredients, so it's pretty easy. But I think the more popular item, there was a lot of competing clafouti stuff going on between crew members at meetings and such. There was a lot of clafoutis, but the oily cakes, Sean Fong, the prop man who made the oily cakes, those were it's fried bread. Those were the big, those were the hot item, so to speak. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you watch it, you want to eat it right away. You know, so speaking to about just as we talk about process and the very enveloping just atmosphere of this movie. I mean, the production design by your production designer Anthony Gasparo is remarkable. Gasparo, sorry. And
and Phil Napier is the costume designer.
Yeah. I just think there, you know, you show us the settlement and just buildings and the mud and the huts where these men live. And as you've noted, of course, you had to do this all on of course a limited budget. Can you just talk about the challenge of that, and but also the amount of research and work that goes into building something that really comes to life in the way that it does?
Yeah, and our scout was Janet Weiss, who some people might know from Sleater Kinney days. Fabulous partners that I have making the movie. The research was an all-out effort. Obviously, John Raymond had done some when writing the novel, but with First Cow, he began. He introduced us to the community at the Grand Ronde, which had opened in Southern Oregon, which is a confederation of tribes near Eugene. And they had just opened this very beautiful museum just when we were starting to go in into pre-production. And they had a library, and John wiggled his way into their good graces, and we, Yeah, they were very generous to us. In fact, lending us the canoe that's in the dugout that's in the movie from their museum. But when the world opens up again, if anybody's on the West Coast, it's a beautiful museum that was built in an old high school. Really intimate and great. April was doing her, she found, everything kind of led to someone. She found a woman who made the cedar capes for us. And then, her family knew someone, or figuring out the language. That was another, which is the Chinook Wawa, which is this trade jargon people are speaking in the film. And so finding different people that could help coach us on that. And it was a really all-out effort for first John and I researching on this in the script. And then once everyone else became involved, our props and art department and everybody was, and then, you get in the van on a scout and everyone's exchanging information. And it's it was, we made a film in 1845 and this is 1820. So there are a lot of differences, but it wasn't like we were breaking totally new ground.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that film, of course, is Meek's Cutoff, which is worth mentioning. Of course, it is very different, but I have a question, and one of our viewers has a question about your cinematographer, Chris Blauvelt, and shooting in this very the square aspect ratio, which gives a very particular look and feel, especially to a film set, especially to a period film and a film set largely outdoors. Can we talk about the deciding on this particular framing for the movie and just the quality that it gives to the film? Yeah.
I'm hardly the first person to shoot a Western in the square. Anthony Mann and Bud Bedecker, a lot of people did it
Totally.
in earlier days, but I personally like the frame. I think it's nicer for a close-up. Especially I was shooting in a forest, all the trees, you have all these vertical lines everywhere. So it just made sense. And also it's an economical frame, one thing, because you are seeing just, what's affordable, but you get more height, you get more foreground, and it's an intimate frame. It keeps you really with if you're telling an intimate story about people without a lot of means at hand, it makes sense to me. It's just like the windows and the cabins that Tony built, they're square, so it's like those fit in nicely. It's there's a lot of reasons to be drawn to it. Unless, of course, when you're making that decision, you're imagining that everyone's in a movie theater watching your film. You're not saying, I'll shoot on the square so everyone can watch this on the rectangular shaped TV.
Right.
Be that as it may. So the best laid plans, but nevertheless.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah. Absolutely. Feeling, it's just easier to feel like you're in the room with them in a certain way. Yeah, for sure. As I was watching the film, it seemed to me, and I feel like a lot of your films are in conversation with each other, but this one felt even more like, you think of Meek's Cutoff and you think of Old Joy, and even just some of the suspense in the film even reminds you of Night Moves. And is this all just kind of, are these accidental associations, or it just feels like it echoes so much of your previous work even more than it does? Or is it, I know it's
unlimited. Is what it represents. I guess similar themes. For one thing, well, it's really more that John Raymond's very limited. That's what I should say. Stories. I think we're interested in the small politics of life, and that's sort of what's exciting to us. And that ends up sort of showing up in the films we're making. I feel I should say more about Chris Blauvelt, because he's such a just such an absolute partner for me, and really has helped me to be able to, I mean, I don't know if I'd still be making films if I hadn't found Chris. It's been really, it's just a really great collaboration, and really, to me, that's what's sort of exciting about filmmaking, is thinking about the frame and what you're doing. And it's great to have a partner in that, that's, that you can just, it's a fun collaboration, you know. And we didn't shoot this in film, you know, we shot this on the Alexa, and I think you'd be hard pressed to tell, which is really Chris's lighting and his ability to, I think, bring a textured look to digital shooting, which is nice. It's not so flat. So anyway, yeah, just to say a little bit more about Chris Blauvelt.
For sure, yeah. And I might as well ask, we have a question from one of our, from the audience. I love the use of light and the minimal use of music in the film. What drove your decisions in those instances? And this is true, your composer, William Tyler, it's a beautiful guitar score that's sparingly used, but really very effective. Can you talk? Yeah.
Merge Record just put out the First Cow soundtrack, Williams music, on vinyl. I think it just came out, which is exciting, though nobody has sent me a copy yet. But I went through a lot of different trial and error with music for this film. And, you know, and when I'm cutting, sometimes I just really get used to there not being music. But there were places that I felt like it could use it. I for a while was working with historical instruments and music from the period from China. I was tried using some of the music from the region, and nothing really worked. It sort of just made it too concrete and set it, I don't know, it felt, there's probably a better way to say it. It felt too PBS in a way, but but I played around with the track from The Hired Hand for a while. And then William came to the edit room with his dulcimer and his guitars, and we just spent a weekend in the edit room, and he played over scenes that I had cut, and we just recorded some scratch tracks. And then after that, he left me with that to play with for a while. And then I could tell it was gonna work, and we started refining it remotely. But yeah, that was just great having him I had never really done it that way before, where someone just came and played was making stuff up while you were showing him footage. It was cool.
Yeah, it works beautifully. I'm going to go dive in. We have a lot of questions from the audience, and I'm just going to go down the list. Some, again, from people who've seen the movie, but one asks, is there a genre of movie that your fans might be surprised that you like to watch? Or do you have a guilty pleasure? I don't know. I don't believe in guilty pleasures myself, but maybe you do. But yes.
Well,
good question.
I mean, I like a lot of different periods of films. I go through phases with different things, and there's still, I mean, now I realize, speaking of watching things on TV, that there's still a lot to be turned on to. I mean, the amount of things you can just see on your TV right now is so incredible. Absolutely. I mean, usually if I try to watch stuff at home, when things were more at the theater and when I was younger, you were just so excited that you would go just see whatever's playing here is what I'm going to see, whatever's at the Japan Society or whatever's at, you know, I was in New York when I was young, Boston, which were both big film places. But now I just get so overwhelmed with the choices. I'll just, you know, like, oh, but you know, but something like, I don't know, some of these stations, I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to take your suggestion and go. But I don't know. I don't know what would be surprising. I think that I mean, people say to me all the time, oh, I wouldn't think you would like that, but I can't at this moment think what it is they're thinking of, or, oh, that's not a Kelly film. But I like stuff.
Well, and I think I, like you, feel overwhelmed, right? I mean, with all the options, especially right now when we're all at home, and sometimes it is easier for me to let the algorithm decide as well.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah, I know.
Yeah. People are often surprised that directors like a lot of movies.
Well, Criterion will put up, you know, just like, here's, you know, what was happening in some year, and you're just like, oh, okay, that's
yeah, for sure. It's no end of possibilities.
But I don't necessarily just watch films that are like the films I make. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Films are not like the films I watch are. Yeah. I would never watch a film as slow as
takes a balance.
Yeah.
A balanced diet. A question is, one of the many things I admire about First Cow is the spare dialogue. Can you talk about how that worked in the script?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it's all perspective. I mean, I'm always looking for where we can kind of take things out. And that sort of maybe starts as I'm working on the script, and John will put stuff in and I'll take stuff out. And then when you start working with the actors and they're doing scenes together, a lot of times, especially when they're doing physical stuff, you realize like, wow, we just really don't need that. And so it's a question of, and then there were times where there were moments where I was like, oh, we need something else, you know, we need something here that we don't have. And so you might come up with something really quickly, but it's this process thing, right? You know, you start from the script and then you're just kind of adjusting all the way through the time you're shooting, and then you get in the edit room and then you're like, oh, I really can, you know, there's more that can come out or go in. But I mean, this is kind of a talky movie for me.
Yeah, it's I guess it's spare for some, but I know for sure it's actually it is and it's very eventful. There's a lot of suspense. There's a lot of action.
The action film.
Totally. I love that about it. I mean, this is a really interesting question. Given the theme of your film, Kelly, and that you begin with a quote from William Blake, and that quote, of course, begins the film, "The bird a nest, the spider a web, man friendship." And with Gary Farmer being part of the cast, is this an allusion to Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man?
An allusion to. I did go back and watch Dead Man at a point because of those things. And I was like, oh, I gotta go back and watch Dead Man. And if you haven't seen Dead Man in recent times, it's really holds up. I think it's a important American film. I think it's really, I did go back and visit it. But it's more like I thought, oh, we can't, the Blake quote is in John's book. It's how John's book opens. And I really, you know, had it in my notebook all the time because I wanted to keep reminding myself that that is what the movie was about that I was making. And I thought because of Dead Man, I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't, maybe I can't use the Blake quote, but then I was like, oh yes, we can. Plenty of room for Blake. But I did go back and visit Dead Man, and Gary is very much in my mind because of Dead Man for sure. For
sure. This next question is comment and question. Hi, Kelly. I think you are the greatest contemporary American filmmaker. Can you talk a bit about how and why?
There.
That's the
Good night.
Good night, everyone. No, not wrong either. Can you talk a bit about how and why the intersection of masculinity and capitalism features so prominently in your work and in this film especially. Thank you. And we've talked a little bit about this. I mean, both those things are of course very present here, but that's a good.
Right. So that's the world we live in.
Exactly.
Yeah, the corporation in the film, the Beaver Company, was kind of modeled after the Hudson Bay Company. And, you know, there really weren't a lot of women out here, aside from the women in the Multnomah tribes that would have been here. There would not have been and maybe a translator, a white woman translator, but it was a man's world. And breaking news, as women get the pill cut off from them this week, I will say that it is still a man's world. Yeah, that I'm is interested in the levels of power in general, and the scene at Chief Factor's house is really where it like comes into the most play, because all the levels of race, sexism, money, like who has the power, and the power can shift. I mean, when you're making a film, a narrative film, you're always looking for where the power is, because that's what everything's based on. But particularly in our stories, I think that is like a general seed that, you know, draws me to John's writing, or our ideas that we've decided on together, have to do with in the small ways and in the large ways. I mean, really the crime that First Cow is centered on is the stealing of milk, not the stealing of the land from the First Nations people, who are going to be wiped out in like 5 years from the year we're setting the film in 1820. So, you know, so there's these, the idea of the hierarchies are of interest, and that usually involves some amount of, masculine power structure.
That scene at Chief Factor's house is where we meet a lot of those First Nations characters, including Lily Gladstone, who was so great in Certain Women, plays Chief Factor's wife, and there are other actors like Mitchell Saddleback and Gary Farmer. And even though they're not center of narrative, but you make sure that we see them and you understand the tricky role that they play in the society, and we feel that tension that they have that exists, even though they are in a subservient kind of role to, of course, the white power structure that exists there. Yeah. And
throw in a Chinese immigrant.
Right.
I mean, well, exactly. And a white immigrant, because just like arrived also. I mean, yeah, everybody basically. Yeah. So yeah, that was a fun scene, because it's all sort of there. But I don't know what other themes are there. If you're not going to make films about that, are there other things? That's how I see the world.
Another question is, hello, Director Reichardt. Thank you for this wonderful film. I'm going to shorten this question a little bit because I think it gets a little bit into spoiler territory, but the question is, what motivated you to start this film with a prologue in the present day? And then I'll leave it at that. Because and it is,
the novel, The Half-Life, the chapters go between 1990 and 1820, and you're falling back, and the bones of the play a big part in the novel. Like, whose bones are they? Are the politics of the modern day part of the story. So in the modern day part of John's stories follows the friendship of these two young contemporary girls. And when we start, you know, at different times we thought of just telling that story in some way, and then just this story. But anyway, so I did think the prologue was important to show the Columbia River, which is the opening shot that the barge goes down, which was a highway for the Chinook were using it to move merchandise or acorns, or, you know, it had always been sort of this trading highway of sorts. And still I didn't have to plan for that barge. I knew if I set up a camera, a giant barge will come, because they're coming in all the time. And so it also says, I think, gives an idea of how the environment has changed, where you can hear all the sounds of a nearby airport, traffic, and set us up in this exact spot where we're going to go back to where Cookie and King Lou are living, and see it. You know, it's meant to be that you know, the river's right off the where the trading post is, because that's where you would like bring the merchandise. So I guess I wanted to. I thought the prologue played an important part in just setting a place.
Yeah, it does indeed. I think we have time for one more question, I'm being told. So I like this one. Can you tell us a bit about your sense of humor? What films make you laugh, and did any inspire the comedy in First Cow, which, yes, indeed, does have a lot of humor in it as well as seriousness.
What? I'm just trying. I like the comedy. I got really into the Heartbreak Kid and A New Leaf, the Elaine May films, were projected in New York last year and just became so readily available. So I've been enjoying those. But it seems no matter what you make, there's always some scene from, if you're making a Western, or in Old Joy too, it seems like there's always some scene that feels like it's out of The Jerk, where someone's just like, we just need this. This is all I need. So that scene of The Jerk always seems to be coming back around. But I don't know, it was getting a little slapsticky at times, and it was really enjoyable and fun to be able to just go with it. We kept thinking of these trappers. They were like, just like Muppets, like fighting with each other all the time. And that was fun. So I don't know. Yeah.
That's a great answer. And in honor of the late, great Carl Reiner, I think that's a lovely note to end on.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got it.
Thank you all for the nice questions. And thanks for, Justin, thank you.
Kelly, it's a pleasure and honor to speak with you. And I wish you very well during this strange time. And
I hope everyone stays safe and well. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.